Hello, travelers. Professor GreyTail here. I know that you have already learned much about our magical world, where good and evil intertwine their wands in an eternal dance. But I am certain I can still surprise you. Long before the events that would shape the fate of the wizarding world, a quieter age settled over the ancient halls of Albus Dumbledore. Then a brilliant young professor at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Winter winds curled around the castle's high towers, humming through stone corridors as though whispering secrets too old for any spellbook. Classes had ended for the day, and most students had retreated to warm common rooms. But Dumbledore walked the halls with the lingering energy of curiosity, his constant companion. A tremor shook the castle. It was slight, hardly more than a shiver beneath the floor, yet Dumbledore felt it as sharply as if someone had tugged at the hem of his cloak. Torches guttered. A distant rumble echoed from deep within the castle's underbelly, a place few had reason to visit, and even fewer dared to explore. Moments later, a frantic knock sounded at the door of his office. The door burst open before he could respond, revealing a pale and panicked Professor Flitwick. "The staircase to the lower cellars has collapsed," he squeaked, breathless. "And something has been uncovered." A disturbance beneath the castle was never a trivial matter. With a brisk nod, Dumbledore swept his cloak around his shoulders and followed Flitwick through winding passages until they reached a narrow corridor lit only by trembling lantern light. Dust thickened the air. Chunks of stone lay scattered across the floor. Students huddled at a distance, whispering anxiously. At the center of the rubble, half buried in the debris, gleamed a small silver casket. It was no larger than a bread loaf, yet its surface seemed to shift subtly, as though light itself bent around it. Ancient runes, none Dumbledore recognized at first glance, circled its lid in patterns that twisted the longer one stared. More troubling still was the faint pulse emanating from it, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping or waiting. "Who touched it?" Dumbledore asked quietly. Two second-year students stepped forward, trembling. "We didn't mean to, Professor," one stammered. "The staircase broke beneath us, and it rolled out." Before Dumbledore could respond, the casket released a thin, whispering sigh. A ripple of cold washed over the corridor. The lantern flames dimmed to embers. Both students swayed, clutching their heads as though dizzy. Dumbledore reached them in an instant, steadying each with a gentle hand. He felt the sickness in them, not physical illness, but a weakening of magical strength, as though something had drained a piece of it away. He straightened, eyes narrowing at the gleaming object half swallowed by ruins. A curse, not dormant, not benign. "Everyone step back," he said softly, though a thread of steel ran beneath his tone. "And do not, under any circumstance, touch the casket again." With a murmured spell, he lifted the object free of the rubble. The runes flared faintly, protesting the movement. The heartbeat-like pulse quickened, and then the whisper came. Not through the air, but directly into Dumbledore's mind. "Hungry." He stiffened. The voice was faint, but its intent was unmistakable. Whatever magic lay within the casket was seeking something, seeking power. The draining of the two students had not been accidental. It was deliberate, the artifact instinctively pulling magic from anything living or enchanted nearby. As he carried it away from the students, the torches brightened, the air warmed, and the castle's uneasy tremor eased. The casket's hunger retreated, though Dumbledore could still feel its attention fixed on him like a cold finger pressed against the back of his neck. He moved swiftly through the halls, Flitwick hurrying close behind. "Albus?" Flitwick whispered. "What is that thing? I've never seen anything of its like." "Nor have I," Dumbledore admitted. "And I fear that is precisely the trouble." He reached a secured examination chamber near the staff rooms, one reserved for dangerous objects requiring immediate study. With a series of careful enchantments, he placed the silver casket upon a reinforced pedestal, then sealed the room against interference from both inside and out. The moment the last ward settled into place, the casket shuddered, sending a faint hum through the stone floor. Flitwick swallowed nervously. "It feels alive." Dumbledore did not answer at once. His eyes remained fixed on the shifting runes, their patterns now subtly rearranging, as though sensing opportunity or challenge. At last he spoke. A curse crafted with intent, ancient, from an era before the founders carved their first stones here. His voice grew quiet. "And whatever rests within this casket will not remain patient for long." The hum deepened, resonating through the chamber. Dumbledore's jaw tightened. The conflict, clear as a thunderclap, revealed itself. An ancient, cursed artifact had awakened beneath Hogwarts, draining magic to feed its unknown purpose. And unless he unraveled its secret, the castle itself might one day fall victim to its hunger. He turned away from the pedestal, cloak swirling behind him. "The casket must be understood," he said, "before it chooses its next victim." And with that, the true adventure began. Night deepened over Hogwarts, wrapping the castle in a hush that even shifting portraits dared not disturb. Yet within the secured chamber where the silver casket rested, silence could not fully settle. The artifact pulsed with a faint glow, as though breathing. Its runes shifted like serpents in sleep, rearranging themselves in patterns that defied logic and seemed to watch anyone who dared approach. Albus Dumbledore had not left its side for long. After escorting the shaken students to the hospital wing and ensuring the castle suffered no further tremors, he returned with parchment, quill, and every instinct sharpened. Though still young, barely past his 40s, he carried about him the unmistakable air of a wizard whose brilliance burned bright and unyielding. Even so, he moved with wariness. The pedestal creaked softly as he approached. A ripple passed through the chamber's protective wards, like wind against unseen curtains. The casket reacted. Its glow brightened. The pulse quickened. Dumbledore paused, raising his wand slowly. "We shall begin gently," he murmured, more to the room than to the object. A conversation of sorts. He cast a revealing charm, expecting reflections of ancient enchantments, resonances, binding layers, echoes of prior spell work. What flared instead made him draw a sharp breath. The casket contained a presence, faint, compressed, and ancient, but undeniably alive in the way a storm feels alive, waiting to break. A whisper threaded through Dumbledore's mind again, clearer this time, sharper, hungry. He steadied himself against the cold fire of the voice. "You will find none to feast upon here," he answered aloud, keeping his tone steady. "These wards are not so easily breached." The casket fell silent, though its pulse continued, slow and deliberate. Dumbledore set quill to parchment, sketching the rune patterns once more. They had shifted noticeably since he last studied them. Symbols of binding had twisted into sigils of awakening. Lock marks had softened into something disturbingly like eyes. Before he could continue, a quiet knock sounded. The door opened only when he lifted a ward, and Professor McGonagall stepped inside. Her expression was tight with concern. "Albus, the stones near the collapsed staircase are beginning to lose their enchantments." Filch reported torches flickering out as though smothered. "Whatever that casket holds, it is still feeding." Dumbledore frowned. "Even through the layers of containment. Troubling indeed." "Do you know what it is?" she asked. "I have some suspicions," he said, "none of them pleasant." McGonagall approached the pedestal only far enough to sense the cold shimmer of the curse. "It should be destroyed," she said, "at once. If destruction were simple, I would already have attempted it." His gaze darkened. "Some curses take their strength from being challenged. Strike the wrong one, and its force multiplies." As though in response, the casket trembled, releasing a faint metallic whisper. McGonagall took a step back. "It moved." "It listens," Dumbledore corrected softly. A silence stretched between them, taut as a drawn bowstring. It was then that Dumbledore noticed something new, a thin seam along the casket's lid, which had not been present earlier. The artifact was opening itself, slowly, patiently, as though tasting the air and finding it to its liking. He circled the pedestal, wand raised. "It is responding to the surrounding magic," he said. "Our wards strengthen its hunger, yet removing them invites direct attack." McGonagall's lips drew into a stern line. "We must find its origin." "Indeed," he agreed. "Artifacts of this age are never solitary creations. They come with histories, warnings, and almost always with enemies." A faint clang echoed in the chamber. The seam widened another hair. Dumbledore stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "It is not merely waking," he murmured. "It is testing." He cast another spell, this one designed to read the residual magic clinging to the object from its years beneath the castle. Shimmering tendrils of history unspooled before him, echoes of ancient hands, forgotten chambers, the slow seep of stone and time. But beneath all of that lay a deeper imprint, one of human will. A wizard had sealed this casket, a wizard powerful enough to bind something within it. And the signature of that magic, though faint, was unlike anything Dumbledore had studied. Bold, fierce, tinged with ambition and fear. He felt McGonagall watching him. "You look troubled," she said. "Because I am," he admitted. "This was not crafted for protection. It was fashioned as a prison that now sought to free itself." The casket pulsed again, stronger, as though encouraged by the very recognition of its nature. The runes brightened, spinning into a new configuration. A cold gust swept through the chamber, bending candles sideways. Dumbledore steadied his wand. "Enough." A ring of blue flame burst around the pedestal, sealing the object temporarily. The casket shuddered but did not resist further, almost as if waiting for a more opportune moment. McGonagall exhaled. "What now?" "We searched the archives," Dumbledore answered. "If a wizard once imprisoned something here, Hogwarts may hold record of the deed. Tomorrow we begin." "But Albus," her voice lowered. "Will the castle withstand the night?" He hesitated. The wards trembled faintly around them. "At dawn," he said, "we shall learn whether we have time, or whether time is already slipping away." The two professors left the chamber, sealing the final wards behind them, and though the corridors of Hogwarts settled once more into uneasy quiet, the casket's pulse continued, steady, methodical, patient. When the chamber stood empty, the seam widened one last fraction. A whisper curled into the darkness. Soon, dawn crept over Hogwarts' School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, in pale gold, but its warmth did little to lift the chill lingering in the corridors. Whispers drifted among the early risers, strange flickers of magic near the lower cellars, torches that sputtered without flame, and a faint hum felt beneath the floor stones, as though the castle itself trembled in its sleep. Albus Dumbledore strode toward the library with long, purposeful steps, his cloak rippling behind him. Shadows under his eyes betrayed a sleepless night, yet his expression remained composed. The silver casket had not fully awakened, but its pulse had grown steadier, hungrier, a constant throb against the wards he had woven around it. Every whisper of its presence pressed at his thoughts like a persistent knock at a sealed door, waiting, testing, watching. McGonagall awaited him at the entrance to the library, already armed with several thick tomes. "I began searching at first light. Nothing yet, but I believe we must look further back than the Founders." "So I feared," Dumbledore replied, pushing open the massive doors. Inside, the library lay cloaked in the soft stillness of morning. Sunlight filtered through high, arched windows, casting long beams across rows of shelves older than kingdoms. Madame Pince glanced up as the two professors entered, her eyes narrowing in suspicion, as though research itself were a suspicious act. "No students allowed in the restricted section without written permission," she said sharply. "We are not students," McGonagall replied dryly. After a moment's hesitation, the librarian relented, though she hovered near enough to ensure no book suffered mishandling. Dumbledore slipped between shelves that smelled of dust and ancient ink. He carried with him a shining memory of the runes etched upon the casket, patterns that did not belong to the language of the Founders, nor any contemporary system of spellcraft. They were older, wilder. He found a table shadowed by towering stacks of parchment and laid 3 volumes open at once. Page after page revealed fragments of history, ruins beneath the Highlands, lost clans of sorcerers predating even the earliest magical communities, wards built to contain curses rather than repel them. Hours passed quietly. McGonagall worked beside him, quill tapping softly whenever her frustration rose. Dumbledore shifted to the 4th book, then the 5th. Then he saw it, a sketch, faded nearly white with age but unmistakable. Ornate runes spiraling around a small silver box. His breath caught. "Here." McGonagall leaned close. "Is that?" "A near match," he said, "though not identical. This drawing predates Hogwarts by centuries." He read the accompanying text, written in tight, slanted hand. "The Casket of Mourngast, a prison forged for the bound remnants of a sorcerer whose ambitions defied mortal will. His name lost, his essence sealed. The casket must never open, for the spirit within feeds upon magic and strength, seeking form once more." A cold draft brushed Dumbledore's collar. Mourngast, a name nearly erased by time itself, remembered only in shards of lore. A sorcerer said to command enchantments that unraveled the spells of others, not through counter-magic, but by devouring their power outright. "Albus," McGonagall whispered. "If this is true, it explains the drain on the castle," he finished quietly, and the students weakened by proximity. He turned the page. "The casket cannot be destroyed. Its contents will not perish but will scatter, seeking new vessels. Binding is the only safeguard." Dumbledore pressed his fingers lightly against the parchment. If the binding failed entirely, the presence within would roam free. He closed the book slowly, deep in thought. "Why now?" he murmured. "Why reveal itself after lying dormant for a millennium?" McGonagall frowned. The collapse, something disturbed it. "An accident?" Dumbledore questioned softly, yet doubt crept into his tone. Chance was rarely so precise. A sudden rustle broke the library's calm. Madame Pince hurried toward them, flustered. Professors, forgive the interruption, but the headmaster requests your immediate presence in his office. It is urgent." Dumbledore exchanged a glance with McGonagall. "Very well." They made their way swiftly through sunlit halls. The stone beneath their feet seemed to vibrate faintly, not violently, but rhythmically, as though echoing a heartbeat, the same pulse as the caskets. When they reached the headmaster's office, Armando Dippet rose from behind his desk, his usually mild expression shadowed by worry. "Albus, Minerva, thank you for coming. There has been a development." "What sort?" Dumbledore asked. Dippet cleared his throat. "A groundskeeper reported an odd disturbance by the cliffside, earth shifting, as if something beneath the surface moved, and—" He hesitated, then continued. "Some enchantments along the outer boundary have weakened." Dumbledore's jaw tightened. The casket's influence was spreading. "It must not leave the chamber," he said firmly. "If its power grows unchecked, the entire castle could be compromised." "Then we must act," Dippet urged. "Can you contain it?" "I will try," Dumbledore replied. He turned at once, McGonagall following closely. Their steps echoed through the halls, faster now, sharper. The hum beneath the stones strengthened with each corridor they crossed. When at last they reached the secured chamber, the air stung with cold magic. The outermost ward flickered like a dying flame. Dumbledore raised his wand. The second ward trembled. The third was fractured. He pushed open the final barrier and froze. The pedestal stood empty. The silver casket was gone. A soft whisper curled from the shadows, chilling the air around them. "Hunger grows," and the chamber fell into frightened silence. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry seemed to hold its breath as Dumbledore and McGonagall stood before the empty pedestal. The absence of the silver casket felt like a wound torn open in the very heart of the castle. The protective wards, carefully layered, meticulously crafted, hung in the air like strands of torn cobweb, drifting uselessly. No force should have been able to slip through them unnoticed. No force should have been able to slip through them at all. Dumbledore lowered his wand slowly. His face remained calm, but a dangerous resolve flickered behind his eyes. "It has learned," he murmured. McGonagall stepped closer to the shattered line of wards. "Albus, the magic wasn't broken. It was consumed. Look." The remnants of the protective enchantments hovered faintly above the pedestal, not torn, not pierced, but hollowed, as though drained to the last drop. Dumbledore nodded. "It feeds upon whatever binds it. The wards I set were nourishment." The whispering pulse returned, faint, distant but unmistakable. A heartbeat without flesh, a breath without lungs. The casket was still within the castle, somewhere. Suddenly, the stones beneath their feet trembled, a low rumble rolling through the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling in drifting veils. "Downwards," Dumbledore said. "It is moving deeper." He strode from the room, cloak billowing, and McGonagall kept pace at his side. The corridors darkened as though a shadow passed overhead, not cast by any creature but unfurling from the walls themselves. Students peeked from common rooms, startled by the trembling floors and flickering torches. Dumbledore raised a calming hand as he passed. "Remain in your rooms. Do not wander." His voice echoed with quiet authority, and the doors closed again, but uncertainty lingered in the air like a storm building strength. The two professors descended toward the lower cellars, the very place where the casket had first been uncovered. The deeper they went, the colder the air grew, as though they walked into the breath of winter itself. A thin mist curled around their ankles, whispering across stone and shadow. When they reached the collapsed staircase, Dumbledore paused. The rubble was no longer still. Chunks of stone had shifted, forming a narrow passage leading into darkness that had not been there before. It felt as though the castle itself had rearranged its wounds. McGonagall's hand tightened on her wand. This place has been sealed for centuries. Nothing should be able to carve a path here. Unless it remembers the way, Dumbledore murmured. They stepped through the opening. The air thickened with a heavy, ancient magic, older than Hogwarts, older than the runes etched upon the casket, older than the language in which warnings were once whispered. The passage sloped downward into a long, vaulted chamber. Faded carvings stretched along the walls, figures with raised wands, swirling storms of magic, and a final image. 4 cloaked sorcerers encircling a single gleaming box. The casket. At the far end of the chamber, resting atop a block of cracked stone, the artifact waited. Its lid pulsed with silver light. The seam along its edge had widened into a clear, deliberate line, like the first opening of an eye. McGonagall inhaled sharply. It is awakening. The casket throbbed, and a gust of frigid wind swept through the chamber. The carvings seemed to shudder as the magic cut through them. Dumbledore stepped forward, wand lifted. Enough, he said, voice echoing. The casket stilled. The faint, whispering presence coiled through the air. Hun. Gare. Dumbledore's magic surged outward, forming a barrier between the artifact and the rest of the chamber. The casket pulsed violently against it, like claws scraping at a door. You will not feed further, he said. But the runes flared, and the chamber's torches, long dead, burst into sudden cold flame. Shadows danced across the walls, and the worn carvings seemed to shift positions, telling a story older than parchment. A voice, thin as smoke, curled through Dumbledore's mind. Binder, breaker, you know not what you guard. The chamber shook. Stone cracked beneath the casket as it absorbed the lingering enchantments buried in the ancient room. Sparks spiraled upward, swirling like fragments of stolen magic. McGonagall shouted above the rising wind. Albus, we cannot contain it here. No, he answered, his voice steady even as the tempest swirled around them. Here it draws strength. We must move it away from this place. He stepped forward. The casket reacted instantly. A shockwave rippled through the chamber, sending splintered stone flying. Dumbledore raised an arm, cloak snapping, and conjured a shimmering shield that deflected the blast. Through the chaos, he reached for the artifact with a binding charm, a spell designed not to destroy, but to quiet. Blue threads of magic wrapped around the casket, dimming its glow. For a heartbeat, it stilled. Then a jolt of force shattered the spell from within. The backlash struck Dumbledore squarely, pushing him to one knee. McGonagall rushed to his side, but he lifted a hand, signaling her to stay back. The casket rose from the stone block, levitating, spinning slowly. A thin crack formed along its lid, and cold mist spilled out, twisting with unnatural grace. A whisper curled through the chamber, clearer than ever before, a voice layered with echoes of ancient intent. At last, breath. At last, light. Dumbledore rose to his feet, eyes resolute. We must prevent it from opening, he said, no matter the cost. The chamber lights flickered, then died. Only the glow of the awakening casket remained, casting long, shifting shadows, and the darkness stirred, as if something unseen had finally begun to wake. Darkness swallowed the chamber as though some great hand had snuffed every glimmer of light. Only the silver casket remained illuminated, its glow a pale, pulsing heartbeat that cast trembling shadows across the walls. Dumbledore stood at the chamber's center, wand raised, every sense sharpened to a razor's edge. McGonagall shifted beside him, alert and silent. The mist leaking from the widening crack in the lid curled like living smoke, twisting into shapes that dissolved before they could be named. The air thickened with a chill that sank into bone and spirit alike. A whisper seeped through the dark, threading itself around them. Free. Free. Dumbledore stepped forward. "You are not free," he said, voice calm but unyielding. "Nor shall you be." The whisper twisted into a low, rasping laugh. "Binder's heir, you speak as though you command the chains." McGonagall lifted her wand, her voice taut with urgency. "Albus, the crack widens." Indeed, the thin line across the lid was stretching, splitting further with each pulse of light. Tiny sparks drifted upward like fireflies that had forgotten warmth. The carvings along the chamber walls, images of sorcerers binding the ancient threat, trembled. Some lines in the stone grew sharper, as though awakening to memory. Others crumbled away. Dumbledore's mind raced. The presence within the casket was not fully awake, not yet, but it was gathering itself, piecing together strength stolen from Hogwarts' foundations, from the wards he had woven, from the very magic humming beneath the castle floors. He could feel its hunger expanding, pressing outward, searching, seeking, feeding. A sudden tremor rippled through the ground. Loose stones clattered, dust spiraled, and fissures crept along the floor like cracks in a frozen lake. "Stand back," Dumbledore murmured. He traced an arc through the air, releasing a surge of azure light that wrapped around the levitating casket. The magic wound itself into a net of containment, shimmering as it tightened. For a moment, the glowing lattice held, restraining the artifact like a web spun from lightning. But the casket shuddered violently. The runes flared, blinding, defiant. Hunger does not bow. A shockwave erupted. The containment net shattered into a storm of sparks, and the force of it threw McGonagall backward. She hit the wall with a gasp, though she rose quickly, determined. The casket rose higher, spinning faster now. Mist spilled thicker from the crack, gathering into a single swirling mass that hovered above it like a half-formed shape, a cloak without a body. Dumbledore braced himself. "It is not yet whole," he called to McGonagall. "We must act now, while the spirit remains bound to its vessel." He thrust his wand forward, sending a binding charm older than Hogwarts itself into the heart of the swirling mist. Blue chains of light shot outward, wrapping around the spectral form with snapping force. The chamber shook. The mist recoiled, shrieking in a voice that seemed both whispered and thunderous. "You dare bind me again? Be silent," Dumbledore said sharply. The runes on the casket dimmed for a heartbeat, just long enough for him to glimpse the darkness within. It was not merely emptiness. It was a vortex, a devouring force, a hunger sharpened by centuries of silence. The spirit within lunged. The mist shot forward, slamming into Dumbledore's shield with ferocious strength. He planted his feet, jaw clenched, resisting the pressure that pressed upon him like a collapsing mountain. The air rippled with raw magic. His shield flickered, strained, but held. Behind him, McGonagall steadied her wand. "Tell me how to help." "Disrupt its anchor," he replied through gritted teeth. "The casket. Strike at the runes controlling the awakening." She nodded once, fierce determination in her eyes, and sprinted toward the circling artifact. The mist hissed in fury, tendrils snapping out toward her, but Dumbledore redirected his shield, diverting the attack. McGonagall reached the pedestal remnants, raised her wand, and cast a spell of severing, not to break the casket apart, but to cut through the lines of magic weaving its runes into life. A sharp crack rang through the chamber. One rune shattered like a shard of glass. The spirit roared, a sound like wind tearing through ancient forests. The casket dropped sharply, losing altitude, its spin faltering. Dumbledore seized the moment. He advanced, pressing his magic forward, tightening the chains of light around the wraith-like form. "Back into your prison," he commanded. "You will not walk these halls." The mist recoiled, swirling chaotically, losing cohesion as McGonagall struck at a second rune. Another crack. More light spilled out. The lid's opening hesitated, frozen between widening and sealing. For a moment, only a moment, it seemed they might succeed. Then the chamber floor heaved with a violent jolt. The ancient stone split open along a jagged fault. A rush of cold erupted from the fissure, flooding the room with the scent of old, buried magic. Dumbledore staggered as the spirit surged with renewed force, tearing through the weakening chains. The mist struck him full in the chest, hurling him backward. His back collided with the wall, knocking the breath from him. "Albus!" McGonagall cried. The mist spiraled upward, coiling into a single, towering column above the casket. And within it, a shape began to form. Neither fully human nor fully shadow, but something ancient and terrible, struggling toward solidity. The casket hung below it, shaking violently, the lid cracking inch by inch. Dumbledore forced himself upright, breath steadying. His wand glowed bright as fire. "It cannot take form," he said. "Not while the prison remains intact." "But the runes," McGonagall began. "Then we must halt its awakening another way." He stepped forward, eyes fixed upon the half-formed spirit. A decision settled inside him with the weight of a stone. "If the casket cannot be subdued," he whispered, "then its hunger must be turned upon itself." The spirit screeched, sensing his intent. The chamber shuddered. The lid cracked further. McGonagall braced herself, and Dumbledore raised his wand, forging the first spark of a plan that could either save Hogwarts or unleash the very terror he hoped to prevent. The chamber rumbled like a waking giant as Dumbledore stepped toward the rising column of shadow. The mist towered above the trembling casket, swirling with a terrible intent, its form growing more defined with each breath of stolen magic. Half shape, half nightmare, it twisted in the air like a storm given thought. McGonagall moved to stand beside him, though the wind clawed at her robes. "Albus," she said, her voice taut but steady. "What are you planning?" "To make it consume itself," he answered. "A hunger without limit may yet be turned inward." He lifted his wand. Its tip burned with fierce white fire. The spirit shrieked, a high, piercing cry like metal being torn apart, and the mist contracted as if struck by an unseen blow. Shadows coiled into a great skeletal silhouette, thin and elongated, with eye-like hollows that glowed faintly. It hovered above the casket, tethered to it by streams of cold light. "You wield the old spells," the voice whispered, slithering through the air like ice over stone. "Futile, all futile. Hunger has waited long. It shall not be denied." Dumbledore strode forward, magic blazing around him. "You cannot grow if your source collapses. You cannot feed if your hunger consumes only itself." He traced a complex shape through the air, a sigil that glimmered and fractured into a dozen shards of light. They spun around the spirit like stars circling a moon. The reaction was immediate. The entity writhed, its form destabilizing, threads of mist sucked inward. The casket below rattled sharply, runes flaring in desperate defiance. The lid trembled, cracking further with every heartbeat. McGonagall summoned a shield around them both as a blast of raw force erupted from the spirit's core. Stone shattered along the chamber floor, sending debris scattering like thrown daggers. A rift tore open in the carved wall, revealing ancient darkness beyond. The spirit surged forward. A wave of cold magic slammed into Dumbledore's shield. He staggered, boots scraping against the trembling ground. His spell faltered for a heartbeat, but the spirit did not. It lunged, spreading tendrils of shadow toward him, each one humming with predatory hunger. "Albus!" McGonagall shouted. But Dumbledore held his ground. He thrust his wand upward, redirecting the tendrils. Light exploded from his wand, brilliant, spiraling, intricate. Each beam cut through mist and shadow, refracting into dozens more. The spirit recoiled, shrinking, howling. "Binder, breaker, meddler. You cannot bind that which endures beyond flesh and time." "Yes," Dumbledore said softly, "but I may yet confine you again." He flicked his wand downward. The sigils around the spirit tightened, drawing it inward. Mist collapsed, drawn into its own heart. The casket trembled violently as though resisting the pull. Runes flickered faster, sending silver sparks snapping through the air. The spirit twisted, writhing in fury, no longer a rising storm, but a collapsing star. For a moment, hope flared, but then the chamber bucked beneath their feet. One of the ancient support columns split with a thunderous crack. Dust filled the air. Stones plummeted from the ceiling. McGonagall cast a protective charm overhead, deflecting the falling debris, though the force of each impact made her arms tremble. And worst of all, the casket's lid tore open another inch. Mist erupted from the widening crack, joining the collapsing form above. The spirit surged, breaking through the sigils with a blast of magic so cold it froze the torches solid. Dumbledore was thrown backward. His shoulder struck the ground hard, sparks of pain flaring across his vision. The chamber blurred around him. Darkness swam at the edges of sight. But he heard it, faintly, horribly, almost open, almost awake. McGonagall knelt beside him, pulling him up. "Albus, the spell. Can you continue it?" He forced his lungs to draw breath. "It is no longer enough. What do we do?" Dumbledore met her gaze. There was no fear in his eyes, only measured resolve, sharpened like steel tempered by fire. "We must move the confrontation," he said. "Here, it draws strength from the chamber, from the ancient bindings, from the runes carved into the walls. If it opens fully in this place, Hogwarts will not withstand what emerges." McGonagall swallowed. "You intend to lure it away." "Not lure," he corrected. "Compel." He raised his wand again, shaking slightly, but burning with purpose. He aimed not at the spirit, but at the casket itself. With a swift incantation, he conjured a chain of shimmering light that wrapped around the artifact, securing it to his magic alone. The spirit shrieked in fury as the casket jerked downward, pulled away from its reach. Thief of hunger, meddler of destiny. Dumbledore rose to his feet. "Follow me," he shouted, voice echoing across stone and shadow, "and leave this chamber behind." He turned and ran, dragging the casket by magic. McGonagall sprinted beside him, shielding them from the violent lashes of mist that whipped through the air. The spirit followed like a storm unchained, tearing through the chamber with a roar that rattled ancient stone. They burst into the sloping passageway. The rumbling intensified behind them as the spirit gave chase, its form barreling against the walls, leaving trails of frost and cracks in its wake. Torchlight died as they passed, and the castle shuddered with every pulse of the entity's hunger. "Albus," McGonagall gasped, "where are you taking it?" "To a place where it cannot feed," he answered. a place where magic runs thin. They reached the collapsed staircase, now warped further by the spirit's presence. Dumbledore leapt, landing on a narrow ledge below. McGonagall followed, her robe catching on jagged stone as the casket slammed into the ground beside them. The spirit tore through the opening, twisting and writhing with rage. Dumbledore spun, wand raised, light blazed. The casket shifted, the spirit shrieked, and the castle itself seemed to cry out as the pursuit thundered into the deeper shadows of Hogwarts. The lower passages of the castle wound ahead like the veins of some ancient beast, twisting deeper into darkness with every step Dumbledore and McGonagall took. Dust drifted from the ceiling as the spirit thundered behind them, its shrieks echoing through the stone like the cry of a long-forgotten tempest. The silver casket dragged in Dumbledore's wake, bound by chains of shimmering light, its runes blazing and dimming in frantic rhythm. The air grew thinner, colder, as though breath itself hesitated to linger. McGonagall pressed close to the wall as a blast of shadow lunged past, shattering a pillar into fragments. "This cannot continue much longer," she said, voice strained. "We will exhaust ourselves before we find a place where it weakens." "We are nearly there," Dumbledore answered, though his voice wavered with exertion. He could feel the castle beneath them, its structural magic thinning, its heartbeat faint. Here at the lowest level, near the forgotten boundary stone set long before the founders crafted the first dormitory, the air thrummed with the absence of enchantment. In this place, spells faltered, charms failed, magic dimmed like a dying ember, a place where the spirit's hunger would find little to devour, a place where the casket might be subdued, a place dangerous in its own right. The corridor widened suddenly, opening into a vast, hollow chamber of rough-hewn stone. It was a cavern rather than a room, shaped by nature and time rather than the hand of a builder. The walls glimmered faintly with moisture. A deep silence pressed upon them, heavy and watchful. This was the unfurnished hollow, one of the castle's most ancient spaces, left untouched because magic refused to cling to it. Dumbledore turned sharply and drew the casket behind him. The artifact bucked against his spell, thrumming with agitation. The chains of light flickered but held. McGonagall shed dust from her robes and prepared to defend. The spirit entered the cavern like a torrent. Mist slammed into the stone archway, dimming as it crossed the threshold. Shadows dissipated at the edges, evaporating into the thin air. Its towering form distorted, shrinking and glitching like a flame starved of oxygen. It shrieked, furious. This place, barren, void. "Indeed," Dumbledore said, raising his wand. "A fitting ground for your imprisonment." The spirit lunged, tendrils whipping across the cavern floor. Dumbledore leapt aside, landing with more force than grace. His breath hitched, but his resolve sharpened. He thrust his wand forward, chains glowing brighter. The casket rose into the air, anchored by his magic. "Minerva, strike the runes that remain, the ones feeding its awakening." McGonagall nodded sharply. She sprinted across the cavern, avoiding the slashing tendrils of mist, and reached the floating artifact. Its runes blazed with wild light, flickering violently as the spirit's presence struggled against the oppressive emptiness of the hollow. She aimed her wand at a jagged symbol pulsing near the seam. "Diffindo." The rune shattered like brittle ice. The cavern shook. The spirit convulsed, mist spiraling inward. Its shriek tore across the hollow, shaking dust from the unseen roof. Another rune flared, bright and defiant. McGonagall struck it too. The spirit folded upon itself, its colossal shape shrinking further, collapsing into a writhing knot of smoke and hunger. Dumbledore seized the moment. He stepped forward, the cavern trembling beneath him. His wand carved bright circles through the air, sigils of entrapment, older even than the Founders, etched into the dimness of the hollow by sheer force of will. The casket reacted, bucking, trying to throw off the spellwork. Its lid split wider, a jagged tear of shining metal. The spirit surged. It hurled itself toward Dumbledore in a final desperate strike. McGonagall cried out. The mist engulfed him. For a heartbeat, the world vanished in cold. Dumbledore's mind swirled with voices not his own, memories of ancient places, echoes of battles fought in forgotten ages, whispers of sorcerers who had bound this being once before. A ravenous void clawed at his thoughts, probing for a way in, seeking purchase. Hungry, feed, break the vessel, take the flesh. But Dumbledore's will flared like a sun. "You shall feed upon nothing," he whispered. Light erupted from him. The spirit recoiled, screaming, fragments of mist peeling away like burned parchment. Dumbledore thrust both hands forward, channeling every ounce of gathered strength into binding. Chains of light wrapped around the spirit. McGonagall, seizing her moment, aimed at the final rune blazing along the casket's edge. Her wand flashed. The rune shattered. The casket snapped shut. The cavern erupted with a sound like thunder being swallowed whole. The mist collapsed inward, condensing into a single twisting thread that shot into the resealed casket. The lid clanged, reverberating through the hollow with a final metallic certainty. Silence crashed down. The casket floated gently to the ground, dormant once more. Dumbledore staggered, catching himself on one knee. The chains of light flickered out. Sweat dripped from his brow. McGonagall rushed to him, supporting his arm. "Albus, are you hurt?" He drew a slow breath, steadying himself. "No, only reminded that age does not always grant grace." She allowed herself the faintest hint of a smile. "You are hardly old. Then it is troubling that I feel so now." His gaze drifted to the casket. It sat in the dust, silent, sealed, dim. "We have stopped the awakening," McGonagall said. "For now," Dumbledore replied quietly. "The hunger sleeps once more, but we must not assume the danger is ended." He reached out, not touching the casket, but letting his magic hover near it. "It fought too hard," he murmured. It was guided. It was awakened not by chance, but by intent. Someone disturbed it deliberately. McGonagall frowned. Who would dare? "I do not yet know," he said. "But they remain within these walls, or worse, somewhere beyond, waiting." He closed his eyes briefly, absorbing the heavy quiet of the cavern. "The conflict shifts," he said softly, "from the spirit to the one who wished it free." They stood together in the hollow, the sealed casket between them, as the castle slowly stilled around them, listening, watching, bracing for what would come next. The unfurnished hollow lay still, holding its breath like a creature uncertain whether to wake or sleep. Dust drifted through the dank air in slow spirals, settling atop the sealed silver casket. For a long while, neither Dumbledore nor McGonagall spoke. The only sound was their own breathing, thick with exhaustion and the fading echo of battle. At last, Dumbledore rose. His legs trembled, but his wand hand remained steady. McGonagall steadied him with a firm grasp of his arm. "You should rest," she said softly. "I shall," he replied, though they both knew rest would not come easily. "But there is something yet unfinished here." His gaze fixed upon the casket, its runes dimmed to the faintest whisper of silver. Sealed, yes, but no seal was eternal, and the spark of intent behind its awakening troubled him more than the spirit within. They ascended slowly from the hollow, leaving the deep and unforgiving cavern behind. Each step upward felt lighter, though the castle walls still thrummed with an uneasy tremor. What had occurred below had not gone unnoticed by the ancient magic woven through stone and archway. When they emerged into the cellar corridors, they found the torches burning steadily again and the air beginning to warm. Yet the castle remained watchful, as though awaiting verdict. "We should return the casket to a secured chamber," McGonagall said. "Somewhere fortified, somewhere—" "No," Dumbledore interrupted gently. "A chamber within these walls is no longer sufficient. Its wards have already tasted the artifact's hunger. They might be devoured again." She nodded grimly. "Then where?" "That," he said, "is what we must determine." They carried the casket between them, Dumbledore guiding it with magic, McGonagall shielding it from curious eyes. Fortunately, the early hour kept most students away. The silent weight of dawn still lingered in the corridors. A few ghosts drifted past, glancing at the professors with polite, spectral concern, but none lingered near the shrouded casket. At last, the two reached Dumbledore's office, a room filled with books, trinkets, and quietly humming devices. The candles lit themselves as the door closed behind them. Dumbledore placed the casket on a circular stone slab in the center of the room, one etched with protective sigils of his own crafting, far stronger than those he had woven in haste earlier. They glowed faintly as the artifact settled. McGonagall paced. "You said someone wanted it released." "Yes." "Why now, after all these centuries?" Dumbledore's eyes narrowed, and in that moment he seemed far older than moments before. "Because power is always sought by those who believe they alone are worthy of wielding it. And this spirit bound within the casket, is no mere shade. It was once a wizard of extraordinary talent and ambition, one whose followers may yet remain." "Followers?" McGonagall repeated, troubled. He nodded. "Ambition leaves echoes, desire leaves marks, magic remembers." She fell silent, absorbing the weight of his words. Dumbledore summoned a scrying orb from a high shelf. It drifted to his hand, swirling with pale light. He closed his eyes, letting his magic brush against the faint disturbances still clinging to the casket. There, an imprint, faint but present. A magical residue left not by the spirit, but by a living hand. Someone had touched the casket recently. Someone who knew its resting place, or knew how to find it. Dumbledore frowned. The awakening was no accident. A spell was placed upon the artifact, subtle but deliberate, a trigger set to detonate upon disturbance. McGonagall's eyes widened. Then the collapse of the staircase was guided, he finished. Silence fell again, heavy and grim. Then a sharp tapping came at the window. A black raven perched upon the sill, peering in with dark, intelligent eyes. McGonagall stiffened. "That is no ordinary bird." "No," Dumbledore agreed, crossing to open the window. The raven stepped inside and dropped a small parchment onto the desk. Then it vanished into smoke. Dumbledore unfolded the parchment. McGonagall leaned in. The message was written in slanted, jagged script. "The heir awakens. The prison fails. Power long forgotten shall rise again. The wise cannot keep what they do not understand. Soon the hollow shall open, and he will walk free." Below the final line was a symbol, a spiral of descending lines, identical to one of the ancient runes etched on the casket's lid. McGonagall inhaled sharply. "A threat." "Yes," Dumbledore murmured. "Or a promise." He set the parchment aside, eyes hardening. Whoever sent this watches the castle. They know we sealed the spirit again, and they believe the awakening cannot be stopped. But it can, she said fiercely. We stopped it today. Today, he echoed. But the casket's hunger grows after each attempt. It learns. It remembers. His gaze fell again on the sealed artifact. Though dim, its runes pulsed faintly, as though in answer. We must uncover its history more fully, he said. Beyond sketches and fragments, we must find the location where the spirit was first bound. You believe that place still exists? Yes, he said. And if we find it, we may discover how to reinforce or remake the prison. McGonagall straightened. Then what must be done? First, he said, we conceal the casket where no one within these walls will think to search. Second, we track the messenger, the one who sent the raven. And third, his eyes gleamed with quiet fire, we journey to find the origin of the curse. This time McGonagall did not hesitate. I will go with you. He nodded once. I knew you would. A distant rumble shook the office. It was faint, like thunder far away, but both knew the sound came not from the sky, but from deep below. The hollow trembled. The casket pulsed. The message's final line echoed through Dumbledore's thoughts. Soon, the hollow shall open. He placed both hands upon the desk, bracing himself. The battle for the casket had ended, but the war for its origin had only begun. The trembling beneath the castle faded, but its echo lingered like a warning whispered into stone. The candles in the office flickered as though stirred by an unseen wind, casting long, restless shadows across the shelves. Dumbledore, still weary yet sharpened by purpose, closed the window the raven had vanished from and turned back toward the casket, its faint runes glowing like distant stars trapped beneath silver. McGonagall watched him closely. If the sender of that message is within the castle, we are not safe. No one is. Fear is their intention, he replied, and thus the first weapon they hope we shall wield. He lifted the casket gently with magic and lowered it into a deep drawer beneath his desk, a compartment charmed centuries ago, sealed from detection, a pocket of stillness in the heart of the castle. As the drawer shut, the trembling in the floor lessened, though the air still hummed faintly, as though the castle itself remained wary. Hidden, McGonagall murmured, but not forever. No, he said, but long enough for us to find what we seek. He summoned a stack of worn, leather-bound tomes, histories so old they seemed to hum with the dust of forgotten ages. He laid them across the desk and opened the first. The pages crackled like brittle leaves. The words within spoke of an order of witches and wizards from a time before Hogwarts, before the great magical sanctuaries rose across Britain, an order founded not upon teaching or community, but upon containment. They had called themselves the Wardens of Hollowmere. McGonagall leaned over the page. These runes, they resemble those on the casket. Yes, he said. The Wardens built prisons, not just for spirits, but for sorcery itself. They believed power had appetite, and that magic untamed would one day swallow its own wielders. She traced a finger above the illustration, never touching the fragile page. The Hollowmere Sanctum, sealed beneath the Highlands, lost when its keepers vanished. Not vanished, he corrected softly. Slain. The spirit bound within the casket was their greatest failure, or perhaps their final warning. A knock sounded at the door. Both stiffened. Enter, Dumbledore called, wand already in hand. The door creaked open, revealing Armando Dippet, the headmaster, his face pale with worry. Albus, Minerva, apologies for the intrusion, but the castle, it shakes, and strange whispers drift near the lower floors. Students are frightened, staff are uneasy. They have reason to be, Dumbledore said. He explained what he could, the awakening, the sealing, the message. Dippet listened in stunned silence, collapsing into a nearby chair. My word, he breathed at last. A dark power hidden beneath the school, and someone within these walls trying to unleash it. What must we do? Strengthen protections, McGonagall said. Increase patrols. And trust no one lightly, Dumbledore added. But the casket is secured. For the moment, the castle is safe. Safe? Dippet repeated nervously. For the moment? Dumbledore closed the tome and met the headmaster's eyes. We cannot sit and wait for the next blow. We must find the Hollowmere Sanctum. Only there may we learn to bind the spirit permanently. Dippet hesitated, then nodded. If you believe this journey necessary, you have the full authority of the school. But choose your path carefully. Dark times stir when old magic wakes. He left them then, pausing only once at the doorway to look back, as though hoping to commit their faces to memory in case he never saw them again. When he was gone, Dumbledore returned to the map unfurled before them, an ancient sketch of the Highlands, marked with forgotten roads and symbols carved in scripts lost to time. The sanctum lies somewhere beyond the Cairn Mountains, he said, hidden in valleys where no village stands and no wizard has passed in centuries. Few paths traverse those lands, McGonagall murmured. Yes, and fewer still return unchanged. She straightened. When do we leave? Tonight, he answered. We cannot delay. Night fell swiftly. A cold wind swept across the grounds as they descended the final staircase toward the courtyard. Not a student stirred. Portraits had closed their eyes. Suits of armor stood tense, as though listening for danger. Dumbledore and McGonagall wrapped their cloaks tightly, stepping out beneath the open sky. Clouds drifted low, darkening the moon. A strange hush lay over the castle, as though it held its breath for them. We travel by broom, Dumbledore said. No apparition. The Highland wards have grown unpredictable. She nodded, mounting hers. He rose beside her. Together they lifted into the night. The wind howled against them as they soared beyond the grounds, past the edges of the protective enchantments, into the wild stretch of land beyond. Below, fields rolled into dark forests. Rivers glinted faintly beneath the moon. The air grew colder still as they pressed northward. Hours passed in silence. At last, the mountains rose ahead, vast, jagged silhouettes against the starlit sky. Ancient, watching, waiting. As they descended toward a narrow vale nestled between two towering peaks, the air shifted, growing heavy, dense, as though saturated with memories not their own. Fog curled in slow spirals, drifting around the rocks. Dumbledore hovered briefly, sensing. This is the place. They touched down upon uneven stone. The air thrummed faintly. A deep vibration felt more than heard, as if the earth whispered beneath their feet. A narrow path wound deeper into the mountainside, barely visible beneath creeping vines. McGonagall drew her wand. The sanctum must lie beyond. Yes, he whispered. They walked, the silence broken only by the distant cry of a bird and the soft crunch of gravel beneath their boots. Strange runes appeared carved into the cliff walls, runes older than the Founder's magic, older than Hogwarts itself, runes of warning, runes of sealing. McGonagall paused, brushing snow-hardened moss from a symbol. These match the ones we saw on the pages. They mark the boundary, Dumbledore said. We approach the threshold of Hollowmere. The narrow path ended before an enormous stone archway, half buried in vines and frost. The arch hummed faintly with power. In its center was carved the same spiraling rune seen on the raven's parchment. Dumbledore's expression hardened. "The sender of the message knows this place," he murmured, "perhaps even watches it still." McGonagall raised her wand toward the arch. "Shall we enter?" "We must." Together, they stepped beneath the ancient stone. Cold swept over them, not the cold of wind or winter, but the cold of magic long forgotten, the chill of a place abandoned by time itself. Beyond the arch lay a vast cavern illuminated by pale blue light, and at its center, a figure stood waiting, cloaked, motionless, a silhouette against the ancient walls of the sanctum. Dumbledore and McGonagall froze. The figure lifted their head. "You arrive at last," the stranger said, voice echoing softly. "I wondered when you would follow the trail." Their hood slipped back, and the face revealed was one Dumbledore recognized. Not a stranger, not an outsider, a teacher of Hogwarts, an ally, and now a betrayer. For a long, suspended heartbeat, neither Dumbledore nor McGonagall spoke. The cavern seemed to lean inward, listening. Pale light shimmered along ancient stone, revealing the figure fully now. Robes dark as deep earth, hair streaked with age, and eyes bright with fervor that bordered on fever. Professor Halden Roll, an instructor of ancient runes, a quiet man, respected for his scholarship, known for his meticulous study of artifacts long forgotten. A man who had dined beside them countless times in the Great Hall, a man they had trusted. McGonagall's wand rose at once. "Raoul," she said, voice taut as a drawn bowstring, "step away from that wall." He smiled faintly, as if greeting old friends. "Minerva, still bold, even in the shadow of truths you cannot comprehend." Dumbledore stepped forward, though he kept his wand lowered. "Halden, you sent the raven." "I did." "You awakened the casket." "Yes." A spark of pride glinted in his eyes. "And I would do it again." McGonagall's jaw tightened. "You endangered students. You threatened the entire castle." Roll tilted his head. "Not threatened, prepared. The spirit must rise if balance is to be restored." Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. "Balance? There is no balance in unleashing an ancient hunger." "Oh, but there is," Roll replied, raising a hand to the runed wall beside him. The stone pulsed faintly beneath his touch. "You see only danger because you fear power that predates your comfortable world. Your founders built Hogwarts upon the remains of older magic, believing they could bury what came before." The cavern responded to his words with a low tremor. Raoul's voice grew reverent. "But Hollowmere never died. Its teachings endure. Power without restraint is destruction. Power confined too tightly becomes corruption. The wardens understood this. They imprisoned what they could not destroy. And now," his eyes shone, "now the heir of their greatest prisoner shall rise again, to finish what was begun." Dumbledore's voice dropped to a quiet, dangerous calm. "There is no heir, only a spirit that devours all magic it touches." Raoul laughed, a soft, unsettling sound. "You still do not understand. The spirit is not merely hunger, it is memory, knowledge, the last remnant of a wizard whose brilliance rivaled legends. He sought mastery over magic itself, not for tyranny, but preservation." McGonagall stepped closer to Dumbledore. "He is deluded," she whispered. Raoul heard. "I am awakened," he corrected. "Centuries of research led me here, to the sanctum, to the runes that speak of the binding, to the truth that the founders feared." Dumbledore lifted his wand slightly. "Then tell us this truth." Raoul spread his arms slowly, as though delivering a lecture. The casket was never meant to imprison forever. It was meant to contain until a worthy inheritor appeared, one capable of finishing the ancient work, to reclaim magic from chaos and restore order to a world drifting into darkness. "And you believe yourself that inheritor," Dumbledore said quietly. "I am his student," Raoul said, touching his chest. "I have studied his runes, followed his path, preserved his legacy, but I am no heir." His eyes gleamed. "The heir is the spirit itself, reforged, reborn." Dumbledore's breath chilled. "Then you intend to release it fully?" Raoul smiled. "Not release, restore." The sanctum rumbled, a deep, resonant pulse. Several runes along the cavern walls ignited, glowing with cold azure fire. McGonagall stepped back instinctively. "Albus, he's activated something." The air thickened. A distant sound, like a slow beating heart, awakened within the stone. Raoul stepped toward them, unafraid. "You sealed the casket for the moment. Admirable. But you forced the spirit into slumber before its time. The sanctum will not allow such interference." He lifted his hands toward the carved runes. The walls brightened. The air vibrated. Dumbledore's wand snapped upward. "Raoul, stop." "I cannot," Raoul said. "And you will not." A blast of force erupted from the runes, knocking McGonagall off her feet. Dumbledore braced himself, a shield shimmering around him. Dust rained from the domed ceiling. The cavern floor split in thin fractures, glowing faintly. Raoul turned back toward the center of the sanctum. A stone pedestal rose from the floor, massive, ancient, covered in the same spirals etched onto the casket. "Here," Raoul whispered in awe, "the spirit shall be reborn." Dumbledore surged forward, wand blazing. A bolt of golden light shot toward Raoul. Raoul spun, deflecting it with a runic shield that crackled like struck ice. The spell burst harmlessly against the far wall. "Your dueling prowess is legendary, Albus," he said, "but this chamber is not your ally. It is mine." The runes flared again. This time, the sanctum itself answered Raoul's call. Blue-white beams arced from the walls, converging on the pedestal. The air grew colder still, and the faint pulse that Dumbledore recognized from the casket began to echo through the cavern. McGonagall regained her footing. "He means to summon the spirit here, into form." "Into power," Raoul corrected, voice trembling with fervor. "The casket was only a vessel. This is its birthplace, its rightful cradle." Dumbledore's magic surged. Golden arcs clashed with runic lightning. Shadows writhed as the sanctum awakened fully, responding to Raoul's will. The air grew so thick with magic that breathing itself felt difficult. Raoul stood upon the rising pedestal now, arms outstretched as the runes spiraled beneath his feet. "When the air rises," he shouted, "the world will tremble, but it will be made new." Dumbledore's voice rang out like a spell of its own. "Halden, this path leads only to ruin." But Raoul only smiled, and the cavern answered with a pulse so deep it shook the mountain. The runes ignited in blinding light. The pedestal cracked open, and from the depths of the sanctum, something began to rise. The cavern quaked like a beast stirring from centuries of slumber. Stone groaned beneath enormous weight, and the runes carved across the walls blazed with a furious blue fire that drowned the chamber in cold radiance. Dumbledore shielded his eyes from the burst, the air crackling with ancient power that clawed at his senses. McGonagall stumbled beside him, bracing herself against a jut of stone. "Albus, what is happening?" "The sanctum is opening," he replied, voice tense. "Raoul has awakened the cradle of the curse." From the pedestal at the cavern center, A shaft of icy light tore upward, splitting the air. The stone platform cracked apart, revealing a deep chasm veined with runes that pulsed like the veins of some ancient heart. Mist surged from it, thicker, darker, far more potent than the spectral presence they had faced beneath Hogwarts. It coiled upward in a spiraling mass, writhing as though struggling to take shape. The cavern filled with a howl that was less a sound than a vibration felt in the teeth and spine, shaking every loose stone. Rahl stood triumphant upon the rising platform's edge, arms lifted toward the spiraling darkness. His eyes gleamed with unhinged delight. "At last," he whispered, voice trembling with worship. "The first sorcerer returns." Dumbledore's wand snapped up, a stream of golden flame lancing toward Rahl, but the professor flung out a hand, a runic shield, its symbols shifting in perpetual motion, blossomed around him. The spell splashed harmlessly against it. "You cannot stop this," Rahl said, lowering his arm slowly. "The cradle has awakened, the binding weakens, the heir shall claim what was denied him." McGonagall stepped forward. "You are deceived, Halden. That spirit is no guardian, only destruction." Rahl's smile widened. "Destruction is merely ignorance of purpose. The spirit devours to purify, to rebuild magic without chaos." The mist above the chasm thickened, congealing until parts of it gleamed with faint metallic sheen, like armor forming from shadow. A vague humanoid outline emerged, tall, imposing, faceless. The cavern trembled again. Dumbledore acted before the creature could solidify. With a flick of his wand, the earth beneath Rahl erupted upward, a column of jagged stone knocking him backward. His shield shattered. He staggered, slipping from the pedestal's edge. McGonagall seized the moment. "Expelliarmus!" Rahl's wand wrenched from his hand and clattered across the cavern floor. But Rahl only laughed, breathless, shaking, ecstatic. "Fools," he gasped. "The sanctum has chosen. The awakening is beyond my hand now." The mist being's outline sharpened, arms elongating, fingers twisting into talon-like shapes. Cold radiated from it with such intensity that frost spread across the cavern floor. Dumbledore advanced, every step driven by purpose. His wand blazed with white fire, brighter than before, brighter even than the cavern's runes. "Minerva," he said quietly. "We must sever its anchor, break the channel between spirit and sanctum. Otherwise it will rise into full form." She nodded at once. "Tell me where to strike." "Not where, when." He raised his wand toward the chasm. The glowing runes shuddered, resisting him, sparks leaping like fire in a storm. Rahl dragged himself upright, blood trailing from a cut above his brow. "You cannot fight the sanctum itself, Albus," he said, crazed wonder in his voice. "You do not understand its purpose." Dumbledore silenced him with a sharp gesture, focusing all his force upon the runes below. The runic channels flickered, dimmed, then burned brighter than ever. The spirit roared, a raw, jagged sound like the bellow of something being torn into existence. Dumbledore's spell recoiled. Sparks flew from his wand. He grit his teeth, channeling more strength. "Minerva, now!" McGonagall leapt forward, wand slicing through the air. She sent a bolt of magic arcing toward the runic pillar supporting the spirit's growing form. It struck true. The pillar cracked. A surge of energy burst outward. The mist being screamed, not in triumph, but in sudden agony. Parts of its form dissolved, collapsing into smoke before reknitting themselves. Raoul's expression broke from awe to panic. "No, no," he cried. "It must rise whole." But Dumbledore was not finished. He thrust his wand downward, signaling the earth itself. The stone beneath them rumbled. Cracks split the cavern floor. The pedestal groaned and shifted as Dumbledore wrested control of the sanctum's magic away from Rowell's influence. Another bolt of blazing magic shot from McGonagall's wand, striking a second pillar of runes. The cavern shuddered. Then the runic channels guttered and dimmed, flickering like dying embers. The spirit's form shrank, warping inward with a howl that shook loose stalactites. They shattered on the floor in violent bursts. "No!" Rawls screamed, stumbling toward the chasm. "You cannot stop him! You cannot!" Dumbledore raised his wand. A ring of shimmering force surrounded Rawls, trapping him. "Your part in this ends now," he said, voice like steel under frost. The mist being thrashed above the chasm, torn between forming and dissolving. Its voice, if it could be called one, rolled across the cavern in a deep, resonant cry that spoke of ancient will. Hun. Ger. It shot tendrils of shadow toward Dumbledore, lashing with wild fury. He conjured a shield that flared brighter with each impact. Cracks spread through the magical barrier. Flames sputtered along its edges. McGonagall struck again, a precise, powerful blow at the final runic conduit feeding the spirit. The pillar shattered. The sanctum wailed, and the mist being convulsed, collapsing inward rapidly, its half-forged body dissolving into a swirl of black and silver. The chasm snapped shut with a thunderous boom. Stone sealed the opening. The spirit shrieked, then was gone, sucked into the sealed earth as though the mountain swallowed it whole. Silence fell, broken only by the ragged breathing of the three who remained standing. Dumbledore lowered his wand. McGonagall straightened, wiping frost from her robes, her chest rising and falling sharply. Rowell collapsed to his knees, staring at the sealed floor in horror. "No," he whispered. "No, you don't understand. This was meant to save us." Dumbledore approached him slowly, not unkindly. "Halden Rowell," he said, "you sought to wield a force no mortal mind should grasp." Rowell looked up, eyes wild with defeat. "It will rise another way. You cannot bind destiny. The heir will return." Dumbledore's expression darkened with sorrow more than anger. There are no heirs to hunger, only victims. He raised his wand, binding Rowell in ropes of shimmering light. The cavern dimmed again, the runes retreating into silence. But deep beneath them, far below the sealed stone, a faint pulse answered, weak but alive. The Casket's spirit was not destroyed, only denied. And denial, Dumbledore knew, could provoke hunger deeper than any awakening. The echoes of the sanctum's collapse lingered like the fading toll of a great bell. Dust drifted through the cavern in thin veils as the last tremors sighed into stillness. The blue fire of the runes dimmed to nothing, sinking back into the stone as though ashamed of having awakened at all. Only the cold air bore witness to what had nearly risen from the depths. Dumbledore stood motionless, his wand still raised, eyes fixed upon the sealed floor where the chasm had slammed shut. His breath came slow, steady, but his face bore the gravity of a man who had seen the edge of disaster and knew it was not yet behind him. McGonagall approached, brushing frost from her sleeve. "We stopped it," she said, though uncertainty colored her voice. "It could not take form. The sanctum is sealed. The threat has passed." Dumbledore did not answer at once. He lowered his wand gradually, as though uncertain whether the cavern would remain quiet if he relaxed even a fraction. Then, softly, "Spirits bound by ancient magic do not fade when denied what they hunger for. They wait, and they learn." McGonagall's expression tightened. "If it cannot rise here, then we have at least gained time." "Yes," he said. "Time is valuable, but so is caution." Behind them, Halden Rowell knelt bound in shimmering ropes, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow with defeat. His earlier fervor had drained away, leaving only a man broken by the failure of a purpose he had deluded himself into believing noble. He looked up as Dumbledore turned toward him. "You ruined everything," Roll whispered, voice rough. "The world needs order. It needs strength. The spirit was meant to bring that." Dumbledore's gaze was heavy with sadness, not anger. "You mistook destruction for order, Halden. You mistook hunger for wisdom." Rahl shook his head. "You cannot understand. He spoke to me, in dreams, in visions. He showed me the future that might be, a future forged from pure magic, freed from human frailty." McGonagall stepped forward sharply. "You were manipulated, twisted by a force that consumes without conscience." Roll flinched. "No, he chose me. He called to me, and I answered because none of you would dare." His voice cracked, not with rage, but with despair. Dumbledore knelt beside him. "You believed yourself chosen because you sought meaning in shadows. But power that speaks through temptation speaks only lies." Roll's breath trembled. "What becomes of me now?" "You will return to Hogwarts," Dumbledore said gently, "where you will answer for your actions, and where we may yet help you reclaim yourself from the influence that ensnared you." Rahl closed his eyes, but whether in acceptance or grief, neither could tell. Dumbledore rose. "We must depart. The sanctum is unstable now. Its runes may never awaken again, but its foundation is weakened." They began the ascent through the cavern, guiding Roll between them. The path was steep, rough with fallen debris, but familiar now in the glow of their wand light. As they climbed, Dumbledore paused once, glancing back. The cavern lay silent, but the silence felt watchful. When they reached the stone archway marking the sanctum's entrance, a wind swept through the mountains, a cold, keening gust that whispered across broken ruins and ancient carvings. McGonagall pulled her cloak tighter. Roll stumbled in its force. Only Dumbledore stood unmoving, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "The spirit is not destroyed," he murmured, "only denied purchase." McGonagall nodded, "and its strength dampened." "For now," he replied. They mounted their brooms and lifted into the air. The night sky stretched vast above them, sprinkled with pale stars. The mountains below receded into stark black silhouettes as they began their journey back to Hogwarts. Neither spoke for a long while. The cold wind stung their cheeks, carrying with it the metallic scent of storm blood brewing far away. Dumbledore felt, more than sensed, the faintest pulse of foreign magic, like a heartbeat echoing from leagues beneath the earth. A hunger sleeping, not sated, not gone, hiding like a wound beneath a scar. He closed his eyes briefly, opening them again only when the warm silhouette of Hogwarts rose ahead through the thinning fog. The castle's towers glowed with lantern light, welcoming and watchful. Strong, enduring, a place worth every fight. They touched down in the courtyard. McGonagall guided Roll inside, while Dumbledore lingered behind for a breath of stillness. Owls shifted in their perches. The moon cast silver upon the stones. The air, though calm, hummed faintly with the lingering memory of what lurked beyond the veil of earth. When he entered his office, the Casket's hiding place responded to his presence with a faint pulse, quiet, restrained, like a heartbeat muffled under cloth. McGonagall joined him moments later, her face weary but composed. "Raoul has been confined," she said. "He will not escape again." "Good," Dumbledore replied, though his eyes remained fixed on the desk drawer. "But even imprisoned, His influence may persist. The spirit touched his mind deeply. And now it sleeps, she said. We sealed the sanctum. Without its cradle, it cannot take form. No, he said softly, but dreams do not require form. She frowned. What do you mean? The casket remains bound, but its whisper lingers in the cracks of the world. And somewhere, beyond our sight, there may be others who feel its call. He rested a hand upon the drawer. Darkness rarely stirs alone. The room quieted. A soft wind brushed the window panes, though the night outside was still. McGonagall stepped closer. What do we do now? We prepare, Dumbledore answered. We learn. We strengthen every ward, every barrier, every path that leads to this cursed legacy. He straightened, cloak falling in steady folds. And we guard the world against what sleeps in the dark, waiting for those foolish or desperate enough to wake it again. The candles flickered. The drawer pulsed faintly. The night deepened around them. And in that stillness, though neither spoke it aloud, both knew. The final confrontation had not yet come. Dawn crept slowly across the sky, pale and hesitant, as though uncertain whether it should reveal a world still trembling beneath the weight of ancient magic. Soft gold filtered over the turrets of Hogwarts, brushing its stones with gentle light. Yet inside Dumbledore's office, the shadows clung stubbornly, drawn toward the drawer where the silver casket hid, silent, but never entirely still. Dumbledore had not slept. He stood by the window, hands clasped behind him, watching the horizon brighten. The events of the night lay heavy upon his shoulders. The spirit sealed again. The sanctum collapsed. Rahl imprisoned, and the lingering pulse of something that refused to fade. Behind him, the casket murmured, a barely perceptible vibration, subtle enough that another might have dismissed it as imagination. But not he. Never he. McGonagall entered quietly, closing the door behind her. She looked steadier after a few hours' rest, though her eyes bore the weariness of too many shocks in too short a span. You are up early, she said gently. I did not lie down, he answered. She joined him at the window, following his gaze. The school stirs. Students will wake soon. Life will resume its rhythm. Yes, Dumbledore murmured, and they must never know how close darkness came. Silence settled. The sun inched higher. After a time, McGonagall spoke. Rahl asked for you. He turned. Did he? He wishes to explain himself again, or justify himself. I cannot tell which. Dumbledore sighed. I will speak with him, but not now. His mind is entangled in remnants of the spirit's influence. It will take time for the echoes to fade. And if they do not, then we shall help him find his way back to reason. Even those misled by darkness may reclaim the light. Her expression softened. You always believe that. I must, he said quietly. If I did not, I would lose faith in us all. She nodded, then hesitated. Albus, the casket. We cannot keep it here forever. No, he agreed. We cannot. And we cannot destroy it. Nor dare we attempt to, he said. To shatter the vessel is to free the hunger. Then what shall we do? He approached the drawer, laying a gentle hand upon its surface. The faint tremor from within met his touch like a breath drawn in sleep. Once, he said, the wardens of Hollowmere crafted a prison capable of binding this spirit. Their sanctum now lies broken, but the knowledge that built it does not rest in ruins alone. McGonagall leaned forward. You found something. Not found, sensed. His eyes grew distant with thought. Within the sanctum, beneath the roar of awakening, there were echoes. faint threads of memory imprinted upon the spirit, not of its hunger, but of its maker, the wizard who became the curse. Morngast, she whispered. Yes, and I believe he left behind more than a prison. There are writings, relics, fragments scattered beyond Hogwarts and beyond the Highlands. His legacy, hidden so deeply that no ordinary seeker would ever uncover it. He drew back his hand. If we can learn how he shaped the binding, if we can understand not only the curse, but the mind that forged it, then perhaps we may create a new prison, one that cannot be undone. McGonagall exhaled slowly. Such a task could take months, years. Then we begin at once, he said, for though the spirit sleeps, time favors hunger. Their conversation ended abruptly when the castle trembled. Just once, a faint shiver, like the last echo of a nightmare. McGonagall's hand flew to her wand. Dumbledore raised a calming palm. Do not fear. It is not the spirit. It is the castle, resettling after the strain. The tremor faded, and the drawer stilled once more. For now. A knock sounded at the door. A young professor, pale and anxious, stepped inside. Headmaster Dippet requests your presence, sir, he said. There is concern among the staff. Some heard whispers during the night. McGonagall stiffened. Dumbledore's voice remained steady. Tell the headmaster I will join him shortly. The professor nodded and hurried out. When the door closed, McGonagall turned toward him. We cannot shield the staff forever. No, Dumbledore agreed. But we shall shield the truth and the burden. He took a deep breath, then gently opened the drawer. The casket lay within, silent, small, ordinary in appearance, yet containing a power vast enough to shatter a castle, a mountain, a world. He levitated it carefully and set it upon his desk. What now? McGonagall asked. Now, he said softly, we send it far from prying eyes. A swirling mist formed at the tip of his wand, shaping itself into a shimmering portal, small, contained, revealing only swirling streaks of moonlike color beyond. A pocket realm, unreachable by conventional magic, hidden even from the castle's awareness. McGonagall watched with mixed awe and worry. A vault outside space? A temporary refuge, he said, until I craft something stronger. He lifted the casket. The moment his fingers wrapped around it, a soft whisper breathed against his thoughts. Not words, not voice, but presence. Hungry. Waiting. His grip tightened. You will wait longer still, he said quietly. And with a single motion, he slipped the silver casket through the portal. The mist folded around it, then sealed shut with a soft sigh. Silence settled. McGonagall exhaled. Gone. For now, he said. We have bought time. She stepped beside him. And what shall you tell the headmaster? That the threat is contained, he replied. That the damage below is structural, and that the school remains safe. She nodded. And when our students return to their lessons? He smiled faintly, tired, but sincere. Then we teach them. We guide them. For though darkness stirs beneath the world, there is no force greater than knowledge shared, courage nurtured, and hearts kept true. She touched his arm. And you will not face this task alone. I never have, he said warmly. A quiet moment passed. Then they left the office together, stepping into the halls where portraits whispered greetings and sunlight washed over ancient stone. Halls that lived because they were protected, guarded, cherished. As the door closed behind them, the drawer remained still. The portal was sealed. The casket slept in its hidden refuge. Yet somewhere deep in the world, far beneath mountain and ruin, an answering pulse throbbed faintly, slow but steady. Not rising, not fallen, merely waiting. And in that patient silence, the last whisper of the sanctum lingered, like a prophecy etched upon the bones of the earth. Nothing bound forever sleeps without dream, and hunger never forgets its name. But for now, Hogwarts was safe, and the war against the cursed casket had only just begun.